the Kohen is to eat truma, but they say that he lost the right to eat truma because his mother was previously married and divorced. And since his mother was previously married and divorced, a Kohen is not allowed to marry a divorcee. If a Kohen marries a divorcee, the child loses its status of Kohen, of the right to eat truma, because of that forbidden union that the Kohen had with this woman, because he did not follow the Torah when the Torah says don't marry a divorcee, and he married a divorcee, so that child will lose its right to eat truma. So as a result of that, hopefully there'll be a deterrent that a Kohen won't marry a divorcee, because there's going to be great consequences that will happen as a result of marrying that divorcee, that child will lose the rights of kahuna. So and two witnesses came and they framed somebody. They framed the Kohen. They framed this child, because we know his father's a Kohen, and we know his father got married to this woman. But these witnesses claim that this woman was previously married and previously divorced. A Kohen can marry a widow, but a Kohen can't marry a divorcee. And then subsequently, two other witnesses say that you guys who claim, you witnesses, you Reuven and Shimon, say you were there at the time that she got divorced, you witnessed her divorce, that she was married to someone else and was divorced. You couldn't have been there. You were with us in China. You were somewhere else. You couldn't have been in New York at that time. That day that you say you were there, you were with us. So now the general rule is, we say you do to the witnesses what they wanted to do to the person. If the witnesses come and they frame somebody and they say Reuven killed Shimon, and then the court, based on their testimony, gave a verdict that Reuven should be killed based on the testimony, and the court did not mete out the verdict yet. They did not kill Reuven. And then two witnesses say that those said about the first pair of witnesses, how could you guys say that you were with us during that time period? You couldn't have witnessed it. So the Torah says you do to the witnesses what they wanted. You would kill the witnesses for attempting to frame and kill another person. Yet the Gemara, the Mishnah says that when it comes, morning Yosef et Tzaddik, morning Haimi. Yet the Gemara says that when it comes to framing Kohen, we don't, even if the witnesses are Kohanim themselves, we don't invalidate the Kohanim, the witnesses, the same way they want to invalidate that guy. We don't say that they lose their status of Kohanim, that they don't eat Truma, and so on. And the Gemara wants to understand why is it that they do not lose their status? Why don't we do to the witnesses when they frame the Kohen? Why don't we do to them what they want to do to this young Kohen? They wanted to make him lose the ability of Kohuna, of eating Truma. Why don't we do that to those Kohanim, those witnesses who framed it? That's the question of the Gemara. So Parpada, we're on 4 lines from the bottom, on Beizam and Aleph, in the Gemara. In the art scroll, it might be what is it? Maybe A3. The Gemara says the following: Parpada Omer, he has the Kal V'chomer. You know, there's 13 ways. There's 13 ways, warning everybody, that the Torah nidreshes behem. There's 13 ways that the Torah, that you could explain the Torah. The Torah is expounded upon in 13 different types of ways. You know, sometimes when the Torah has a word, something called the Gzeira Shaveh, sometimes the Torah says the same word in 2 different places. And by saying the same word in two different places, the Torah is just the Hebrew, old-fashioned. They say the same word in 2 different places. Sometimes it's teaching us a certain law, a certain halacha. And there's another one, you know, it says this word, like the famous by Pesach. Torah says by Pesach, the 15th of the month of Nisan. 15th of the month of Nisan, the first month, the 15th day. And by Sukkot, it says the 15th of the 7th month, which is Tishrei. So it says 15 there and 15 there, and there is a Gzeira Shaveh. There's certain laws that we learn out. That's one of the ways the Torah Torah is explained. Another way is sometimes the Torah connects 2 different things. A hekesh. Torah puts marriage right next to divorce. So, you know, there are laws that we compare certain laws that apply by marriage, applied by divorce, certain halachic teachings. Um, there's another one of the 13 principles. It's called Kal V'chomer. Kal V'chomer means when you have something light. Kal means light. The Chomer means something very strong. So, and if a law applies, if something is light, it's not so strong, has a certain law, so something which is stronger would definitely have that law. That's the basic idea of a Kal V'chomer. So the Gemara says here we should have a Kal V'chomer. Here there's a special Kal V'chomer that teaches us to excuse this person, these witnesses, from doing to them what they wanted to do to the others. Specifically, this case of Kuhuna, this is going to be one of the exceptions the Gemara wants to say. We have a Kal V'chomer that shows that the Kohanim that testified falsely, that attempted to frame somebody, we're not going to invalidate them. We're not going to say, because they wanted to make this guy unfit to eat truma, because they wanted to make him called a halal, we're going to make them unfit. Why not? So the Gemara says like this, Parpada Omer. Is it clear? Everything clear? This is where the Gemara is up to now in the Gemara. Parpada Omer, Kal V'chomer. Uma ha-mechalel ina mischalel. A Kohen who marries a divorcee, who violates the Torah's commandment not to marry a divorcee, and he invalidates his children from Kuhuna. He ruins them from the ability to eat in Truma. A mechalel. Yet, the law is he himself, even though he's doing this sin, the Torah does not invalidate him from eating Truma. Even though he did this sin, he validates the children, which are, you could say, they are the product of this forbidden union. He was not a product of the forbidden union. His parents, everything was fine, born in Mr. Haber. So, by the way, Mr. Haber, the Gemaras were ordered. Okay, so okay. Welcome. So ma ha-mechalel ina mischalel. Somebody who actually makes his children unfit, yet he himself does not lose the status of Kohen. He still has the rights of Kuhuna. So habon lechalel. Somebody who does not actually make someone else unfit. They attempted to make someone unfit. The witnesses attempted, something called attempted murder. A terrorist attempted to make the person lose the status of a Kohen. They just attempted to make him lose something. Certainly he themselves, the witnesses themselves, should not become unfit to eat the truma. So again, let's explain this again. We find that when it comes to making someone unfit to truma, the Torah is not so fast. The Torah is not so fast to invalidate someone from eating truma. Someone who is a Kohen, the Torah is hesitant that he should lose his ability to eat truma. What's the proof? The proof is that even a person who actually invalidates his son from eating truma, a person who marries a divorcee, he invalidated the other guy, correct? That child that's born from that union, he married a divorcee, that child cannot eat truma. But he himself has the ability to eat truma. He himself doesn't lose his status from eating truma. So if a person who actually causes someone else to lose the status of eating truma, yet he himself doesn't lose his own status, so a person who merely attempts for someone to lose his status. The witnesses are, the Gemara is comparing, look at a Kohen who marries a divorcee, compare it to the witnesses that are framing the other person. The Kohen who marries a divorcee actually creates that the children that are born are unfit for Truma. But he himself, the Kohen himself, remains remains permitted to eat truma. Truma means to separate. Truma is a separation where you separate, where you give from your grain to the Kohen. The Torah says that you have to give from your produce to the Kohen. We have the Kohen.
Is that this,
that's
Rabbi?
What? Yes.
Is this concept to protect the livelihood of the Kohen? Because Truma is really a sustenance. It's financial.
Yes. It's right. It's one of the 24 gifts. The Kohanim get 24 gifts. We have a Kohen, Mr. Rappaport here. The Kohanim get 24 gifts. One of the gifts are Pidyon Haben, birth of the firstborn. You give the 5 slain to the Kohen. Everybody's familiar with that gift to the Kohen. But another gift to the Kohen, like Mr. Haimi said, this is the gift to the Kohen is to help support the Kohen, because the Kohanim have a different job. We have to take care of the Kohanim, and that's why the Torah gave these gifts to the Kohanim, to the Leviim, because they were given the job to work for the community. They got they have to be paid. How are they going to have sustenance? Right.
The financial sustenance.
That's their financial sustenance. That's going to support them.
They seem reluctant. They seem reluctant to strip it away from him, and very protective of keeping the livelihood of the Kohen.
Very good. That's what it seems like. That the Torah is very hesitant that he should lose his livelihood. Correct. So that's what exactly. So that's what the Gemara is going to say over here. If the Torah is so hesitant that the Kohen shouldn't lose his livelihood, even though he's causing someone else to lose their livelihood. He's causing his son. His son that's born from that forbidden union, loses his ability to eat truma, to get truma, to receive truma. So witnesses who did not cause someone else to lose their truma, they attempted, they tried to get someone to lose their status. So surely they themselves shouldn't lose their status. That because they merely attempted, someone who actually was successful in causing someone else to lose their truma, they themselves don't lose their truma, the Kohen who married a divorcee. So if the Kohen if someone tried for someone else to lose their truma, they weren't even successful, certainly they should not go ahead and lose their own status. That's the Kal V'chomer of the Gemara. Is that clear? Everybody have that? That's the Gemara. That's what the Gemara wants to say.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't ask it before, but you mentioned that Kohen can marry the widow.
A Kohen can marry a widow. The only Kohen that can't marry a widow is the Kohen Gadol.
Okay, but I think there is a limitation on that. She must be a virgin, no?
No, that's only for a Kohen Gadol. Only a Kohen Gadol has that law. And if a Kohen is allowed to marry a widow, she was married for many years, her husband passed away, the Kohen is allowed to marry her, 100%.
Even if she have kids and everything?
Yes, 100%, 100%.
So what about today? If somebody is like a Kohen and is married, somebody's never been married, but she's not a virgin anymore. Can he marry?
It's no problem. It's no problem. It's no problem. Again, as long as the lady wasn't divorced. The only one the Kohen can't marry today, we have no Kohen Gadol today. The only one that Kohen can't marry today is a woman who was a divorcee, or we said a chalitza. If the woman's husband passed away and they had no children, and then they did the process of chalitza, which we spoke about, the Kohen can't marry this woman whose husband passed away and there was no children, and the chalitza was done. It seems that it's a higher level. We have to look more into it, but because it's a higher level. It's a higher level for the Kohen. It's something that's higher that he's marrying a woman who was never divorced, was never had that.
I was under the impression, Rabbi, that once someone is slept with someone, it's like Kedat Moshe Rabbeinu. because there was like 3 ways to marry somebody. Either you sleep with her, okay, like the what is his name?
It's called Bia. The Gemara in Kedusha,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like the daughter of Yaakov, why they marry to what is his name? I forgot what his name.
With Shimon and Shechem, the story of Shimon and Shechem over there.
Yeah, they marry her because like he slept with her before. And the second is basically the ring, and to say the words Ariat Nesurali, Pidat Moshe Vadin. And there is the third one, I forgot what it is, but so Be'ilah, it's like if she's married, so if she's married, being slept with someone else, she cannot be married to a Kohen.
Again, if a lady, again, the Lord, again, another, you bring up another point, it's a good point. If a lady went with a guy, if a woman went with a guy, had a relationship with a guy, that woman also, what I recall, the Kohen can't marry such a woman. That's another woman that a Kohen can't marry. That's a zonah. If a woman had relations with a non-Jewish person, that woman is invalid for the Kohen to marry. Doesn't mean once she had relations with a Kohen, once a woman had relations with a guy, that woman is invalid to marry a Kohen. Okay, but the Kohanim will have to ask the questions more, when they're looking for a girl to get married, they have to speak to the rabbi. They have to go through the laws exactly which type of woman is permitted for the Kohen to marry. That's the issue with a balas shuvah, a woman who was a balas shuvah, but if she was active before she became a balas shuvah, if she was active with a non-Jew, that would invalidate her for a Kohen. Okay. Yes. Right, the 39 lashes, right. Menat Torah, yes. And the Gemara is going to say, what do we do to this Kohen, these witnesses that framed the Kohen? So we give them lashes. That's what the Mishnah says. We give them lashes for framing this Kohen. Testifying falsely about this Kohen, by testifying that they saw the mother get divorced when they could not have seen the mother get divorced. They were not there at that day. They were in a different place. So what do we do to the witnesses? We go ahead and we give them Makkos. These witnesses would get lashes. Right, so then we would also, in such a case, we would also give them lashes. In that case, this case. What do you say? Right. Even though in general, it would seem in general, you never give lashes. In general, we don't give lashes unless people are warned. Right? If a guy goes ahead and eats not kosher food, and even if there are witnesses that eat not kosher food, we won't give a guy lashes. The court only gives lashes when the guy was warned. Witnesses warned the guy. They said, you know what, if you eat this food, you're going to get lashes. So then, under those circumstances, does the person get lashes? A person eats not kosher, and he wasn't warned, the court will not give him lashes. Hashem, God will deal with the situation, right? But I hear by witnesses, but Edom Zomim, it would seem it's one of those cases that if witnesses come to court, they're not, the fact that they testify falsely, the fact that they framed somebody, that's enough to get lashes, even though it doesn't seem that they were warned beforehand. They just came to court and they made that testimony. Right, but still, there's still a law that have to be warned. We'll see. The Gemara will discuss more later on about this. So the Gemara says, Maskif la Ravina, on the bottom line of the page. Ravina asked the following question. Maskif la Ravina, Im Kain, if this Kal V'chomer would work, you want to use this Kal V'chomer, this line of reasoning, Batla Torat Edim Zomim. What will happen as a result of that, you're going to knock out the whole concept of Edim Zomim. if you use this logic, Eidim Zomamim, which means, remember, Eidim Zomamim is that when people frame somebody, the general rule is we do to the witnesses what they wanted to do to the other guy. That's the general rule. For attempting to going ahead and trying to cause a punishment to somebody, we give them that punishment. For instance, they went ahead and they attempted to murder, the witnesses attempted to murder somebody by framing somebody, by saying that Reuven was the murderer. They say they were there, they saw it happen. They say Reuven was the murderer. And then we have two other witnesses that say, you with us on that date. You could not have what? Seen it. And the law is, the court will kill the witnesses specifically if the court did not yet mete out its verdict. Meaning to say, the court gave a verdict based on the testimony of the first pair of witnesses that we're going to kill this person, based on the testimony of the witnesses. And then the court did not yet kill the guy. And then two of the witnesses walk into the court and they say, these first two guys that testified were with us. They could not have seen this, they could not have seen this, what they testified about. That's the case that the court will go ahead and mete out capital punishment to the witnesses. But what about if the court already went through the verdict? They executed the verdict. They executed the guy based on the testimony of the witnesses. So what do you say? Right. But at that time, the law is a very interesting law. We will not kill the witnesses. Right. Attempted murder and murder. Exactly. When the witnesses attempted to murder somebody based on the testimony, but they were not successful, they get killed. If witnesses actually murdered someone through their testimony, then the witnesses don't get killed. Logic, you would have said, wouldn't you say the opposite? Logic, you would have said, if the witnesses actually attempted to murder someone and they weren't murdered by based on the testimony, maybe they shouldn't get killed. But if they actually were murdered, the guy, Reuven, an innocent guy, was killed by the court based on the testimony, certainly the witnesses should get killed, right? But we say not that way. The pasuk says, "Vasitem lo kashezomam lasod lachim." You do to the witnesses what they wanted to do, what they attempted to do, but not what they actually did. Now, this will apply. What do you say? So we're going to give this background, then we'll appreciate the question. Now, some say, what do you say? Some say that this is only in capital punishment cases, meaning if the court actually obligated money from somebody, right? Meaning it's not done because the money could give them back. Let's say the court says two guys framed someone. They said that this guy borrowed $1,000 on a certain date, and then we witnessed the borrowing of the money. And two other witnesses say, "You guys couldn't have been there. You were in another part of the world. You were with us in another part of the world." Even though the court gave the money based on the testimony, we will go ahead and we can undo that. We could go ahead and say, give the money back. The guy who received the money based on the testimony first would have to give the money back. And the witnesses who based on their testimony, we gave the money, they got to pay that money to the guy they framed. So they obligated $1,000 to somebody. The court went ahead and gave the $1,000 based on their testimony. We're gonna, even though the court gave the money, the law will be that they have to give the money back. And the witnesses, the guy who received the money will give the money back, and the witnesses will be punished to pay exactly what they wanted to do to the other guy. However, when it comes to capital punishment, you can't undo. Once the guy was killed, it's done. And we're not going to kill the witnesses once the court actually listens to those witnesses. And now you can ask the question, Rabbi, why not? That's the law. The law is we're going to be more strict for attempting to murder, for the witnesses attempting to kill somebody, than we are when the court actually did kill the person. What'd you say? So again, so you should say kill the witnesses. They actually killed someone. The court actually killed someone based on their testimony. So I saw Rabbeinu Bachai, the Ramban, they say the way I'll tell you how they're leaning, their idea, what I recall is the following. If the court killed this person based on the testimony of these first two witnesses, who are the court? The court are tzaddikim. The court are righteous people. Who are the rabbis? Mavadi Yosef from Moshe Feinstein. Who are the rabbis on the court? You have to have a Sanhedrin. Who runs the court? The Sanhedrin. You need a minimum of 23 great rabbis on that to do capital punishment. The court has to be at least 23 rabbis. That's how serious it is to do capital punishment. If Hashem, God, allowed it to happen that the guy should get killed based on their testimony, that means that person was worthy of getting killed. So therefore, at the end of the day, it comes out that the witnesses were really testifying about a person who was deserving death. So even though they themselves had no right to go ahead and testify, but they were really testifying about a person who's really supposed to get killed. And therefore, being that that's the case, we're not going to kill, perhaps that's a suggested reason. The Torah doesn't give a reason. That's one approach some want to explain. It's not a simple approach, but at the end of the day, the witness had no right to be the messengers to create that, right? So that's one approach. But I have a different approach, and I wonder if I heard it once. The following approach: there's a concern. Remember, God evens the score. Nobody gets away with murder. People think there's something comes of getting away with murder. There's no such thing, because God will deal with the guy. There's no question. A person murdered someone. There's no witnesses. Nobody knows about it. But God knows about it. God will take care of them. So don't worry. The witnesses will get dealt with. The thing is, there's a concern perhaps for the court, for people to lose faith in the court system. Because if you're going to go ahead and kill the witnesses based on that the court killed an innocent man, then people are going to lose a total confidence in the court. That means the court actually was so wrong and so bad, and it'll be publicized to the world that this guy, we're killing these people. When a person gets killed, it's very well publicized that the person gets killed. I was learning with Jake, preparing yesterday, 2 days ago, this Gemara, and perhaps the concern for the court system, that people shouldn't lose faith in the court system. Maybe that's perhaps why the Torah does not say you do to them what they wanted to do to the other guy when the court actually meted out the verdict and actually killed the guy. That was another possible approach. But again, you could think about what the possible reason. Again, there are certain things that the Torah doesn't give reasons for. And we could try to understand on our own. We're just suggesting some ideas, perhaps, for this. But at the end of the day, the reason it's the pasuk that we learned this out from. So now the Gemara said. Now the Gemara says. So we see the concept that we are more strict for attempted than actualization of the court. So therefore, you can't make this kal v'chomer. The Gemara wanted to make a kal v'chomer to say that the witnesses who attempted to make the Kohen invalid from eating truma is less of a crime than the Kohen who actually invalidates his children. And if the Kohen who invalidates his children by marrying a divorcee, if he himself doesn't lose his status, so the witnesses who attempted, the Gemara wanted to say, to invalidate somebody else should definitely not lose their status. So the Gemara says no. Attempt we find is worse by witnesses, and you can't use this type of kavachomer. But if you use this kavachomer, you'll knock out the whole laws of Edom Zomer. And now the Gemara illustrates
one
that.
second,
Yes.
Rabbi, just so I understand, the attempted is treated less severe than if it's
More severe.
actualized.
The attempted is more severe. It's more severe because if a guy witnesses attempted to kill somebody by framing somebody, they came to court and they wanted to kill an innocent guy. They come ahead and they were found.
But if the framers are successful and the punishment is actualized, the logic is that Hashem allowed it to happen and they were deserving, so the punishment should be less severe.
Right. So therefore, since they would see, the question is, it's a good question. What's the reason for it? The Torah doesn't say what the reason is. The Torah just says the given is, if it was actualized, we don't kill the witnesses who actually framed the framers. We don't kill the framers if what they framed the guy was actualized. Now the question is why? So we suggested this reason that perhaps, and not we said, Rabbeinu Bachai says that perhaps because even though the framers did a terrible sin, because they testified to something that they had no right to testify to.
They were agents of something that Hashem wanted to see happen because it passed by the 23 Sadiqim, and if it gets by them, it should have happened.
Exactly. So in other words, those witnesses, they framed somebody who was anyways deserving of death.
They were agents. They were agents for a punishment that Hashem wanted meted out anyway.
Exactly. That's how Nachmanides approach. Right. That's how they want to suggest perhaps to understand why the Torah does not give capital punishment to those framers once the court meted out the punishment.
Because treating attempted murder worse than murder is counterintuitive. It's not logical.
Exactly. That's why they're trying to understand what's going on. Why should we be so strict with attempted murder more than murder itself? That's exactly what they're trying to understand. What? The question that the commentaries are trying to understand is, how is it that we're more strict? The Torah is more. How to understand the Torah when it comes to capital punishment? That if the court meted out the punishment, we're gonna say we're not gonna. And then after the court meted out the punishment, the court killed someone based on the testimony of two witnesses. What? We're not gonna do it. Right? Why? Well, after the court, once the court punished the guy, killed the guy, we're not gonna. Then two of the witnesses walk into court and they say, "Hey, those two witnesses that the court accepted and killed the guy based on the witness who was us in a different country." Okay, so good. So we're going to read. Let's read a few more lines. Then we'll explain. Very good. So look, very good. So look at the Gemara on Amid Beis. Beis Amid Beis. Mazel tov, Mabruk. We turn the page. Ma hasokel eina niskal is an eight zomemim. If the witnesses, the framers, were successful, the law is they do not get skila. If the framers were successful and the court kills someone based on their testimony, they don't get skila. Skila is the stoning. So ma sokel ein niskal, witnesses that were only found to be framers only after the fact, after the court meted out the punishment, they don't get punished. If witnesses come just to create a punishment and the court did not do it yet, if you make a kavachoma, so you should say there's never a case that you kill the witness, the framers. Because if you don't kill them when the court meted out the punishment, certainly you shouldn't kill them when they attempted to kill. And we know that the Torah says that you do kill the witnesses when they attempt to kill somebody else. So if you would make the Kal V'chomer, so the Gemara is proving that this Kal V'chomer does not work by Edom Zomer. This logic that attempted to do something is not as severe as actually doing the act, does not work. That logic might work in other areas of the Torah. But in the area of Edom Zomim, the way Edom Zomim work, right? It's not attempt is not less. We don't look at attempt as less than actually being done. And we proved it because we find we're more strict. Morning, Mr. Feldman. We're more strict by attempted murder of the witnesses than actually the witnesses actually created the murder by the court. So too, the Gemara says, to address Yaron, so too when it comes to the Kohanim. If the witnesses frame somebody, the witnesses they attempted to make this guy a halal. They wanted to make this child who was born from a Kohen, his father was a Kohen, and they wanted to ruin his reputation, that he should lose the ability to have Trumah. The fact that a Kohen who marries a divorcee, the fact that he actually ruins his children's reputation, and he himself doesn't get ruined, but maybe it's worse for someone who attempts to ruin someone's reputation, because the witnesses attempted might be worse than the person who actually actualized it, right? We said we have a precedent. The actualization of something when it comes to Zomim is not as, sometimes could be even not as strict as attempting to cause. For witnesses, attempting to cause someone a loss is in a certain sense sometimes even worse than actually causing the loss. So therefore, since attempting might be even worse, that's the new phenomenon, the new chidush, the novelty of Edom Zomim is attempting is even worse than actualization of their testimony. Just the fact that they attempted to ruin somebody. So maybe by Trumah, the witnesses who attempted to cause this child, this Kohen, to lose his status, maybe we should be more strict by those witnesses. And maybe we should do to the witnesses what they wanted to attempt to do to that child. And maybe those witnesses should lose their status of Kahuna. So why don't they lose their status of Kahuna? Why don't we do to those witnesses, the Kohanim that came to court, and they wanted to make this child lose his status? Why don't we let them lose their status? So therefore, that's what the Gemara says. Ela machvarta, the Gemara concludes, Kidushanina meikara, like our first answer that we gave. The reason why the Kohanim who attempted to ruin this other Kohen, they wanted to say that the Kohen's mother was previously divorced, and they wanted to say, therefore, this child of this Kohen lost his status of Trumah because the mother was previously divorced and the father had no right to marry a divorcee. The reason why we don't do that to those witnesses is because the Torah says when you punish witnesses, you punish them for what they wanted to do to the other guy, and you don't punish their children. And if you're going to make the witnesses unfit to Kahuna, not only you're punishing them, you're going to be punishing the witnesses' children. And therefore, we do not punish the witnesses who attempted to make this child, this Kohen, lose his status. We don't do to those Kohanim witnesses what they wanted to the other. Rather, what do we do to those Kohanim witnesses? We give them Makkos. The court will give them lashes for doing such a terrible act of trying to attempt to ruin the Kohen's life. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you all for joining in. Thank you, Mr. Rappaport, for coming to share.
Thank you,
It's
Rabbi.
all about Kohanim. How do you like that? You walk in at the Kohen. How do you like that? It's always the right time. You know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Have a good day, everybody. Jaime, have a great day. Have a good day, everybody.
Who's the Kohen Gadol?
Kohen Gadol is the high priest. There's one high priest, like the leading Kohen.